9 years of silence, one phone call, and a folded piece of paper with 4 demands on it, like she was ordering off a menu. That's what my mother brought to my front door the day our story went public. She had no idea that piece of paper was about to become the most expensive mistake she ever made. 9 years earlier, I stood in my parents' living room in San Jose and told them I was marrying Linda. My mother didn't yell. That would have almost been easier. She set her coffee cup down, slow and deliberate, and asked if I was really going to do this to them. Do what, Mom? Fall in love? My father didn't look up from the television. That told me everything about where he stood. Nowhere. Same as always. If you marry that woman, my mother said, don't call this house again. That woman has a name, I told her. It's Linda. I don't care what her name is, she said. My Aunt Yvonne chimed in about thinking of my children's future. I am thinking about them, I said. I'm thinking they'll grow up in a house where their parents actually love each other, which is more than I can say for this one. My mother picked her cup back up. Ruling delivered. I stood in the driveway afterward, keys shaking in my hand. 26 years in that house, and it turned out all of it had been conditional. Welcome back to Dad's Sweet Revenge. Every villain in these stories thinks they're the smartest person in the room. They never are. I married Linda 4 months later. My business partner Donovan stood up as my best man, since apparently blood only counts when it's convenient. Her whole family came, crying good tears, shaking my hand like they'd already decided they liked me. My side had 11 people, mostly friends who showed up because they loved me. That empty half of the room was the last time my family would ever get to stand next to me for free. Growing up, my mother was the center of gravity in that house. Every decision orbited her approval. Meeting Linda was the first time I'd ever wanted something enough to risk that gravity tearing me apart instead of holding me together. We met at a barbecue. She was defending homemade barbecue sauce with a conviction I couldn't ignore. 6 months later, I brought her home, naively sure everyone would feel what I felt. I was wrong, and the silence that followed never once softened. It just calcified. So we built something ourselves. Linda had grown up on her grandmother's recipes. Hot sauces and pepper jellies sold off a folding table at the farmer's market. I was working a sales job I hated. On weekends, I loaded jars into my car and hauled them to whatever market would have us. Some Saturdays we sold out by 10. Other days we stood there 6 hours and sold 4 jars. We ran Sullivan and Grady sauces, her maiden name right there on the label next to mine, out of a rented commercial kitchen for 6 years, 16-hour days. Maxed out cards. Nights Linda did inventory by hand because we couldn't afford software, while I did the same with our bills, and we'd just look at each other and laugh because what else was there to do? Donovan came on early, walked away from a stable accounting job because he wanted to be around people who didn't play it safe. When Costco picked up our first line, the 3 of us sat in our kitchen and cried like idiots. 3 years after that, a consultant named Archer helped us navigate an acquisition offer from a national food conglomerate. She told us flatly not to sell for less than it was worth, and not to be too proud to take a good offer either. The first number was low. She told us to walk. The second was better but still short. Donovan ran the projections until his head spun. Linda kept making the sauce and reminding all of us that none of the numbers mattered if people ever stopped trusting the product. They're not buying spreadsheets, she said. They're buying trust. $11 million, 9 years of vinegar and pepper seeds and stubbornness, and there we were. I've never been more sure of anything, I told Archer, and we signed. 2 weeks later, a business journalist ran the story. Farmers market to 11 million. It went everywhere, including, inevitably, the living room I grew up in, 20 minutes from where I now lived with my wife and our 2 kids. My mother watched that segment 3 times before she picked up the phone. I used to think certain milestones might crack her silence. Our daughter's birth, Linda's stubborn chin, my father's exact hazel eyes he'd never get to notice. I sent an announcement anyway, some small, foolish hope still alive. Nothing came back. Our son came 2 years later. By then, I'd stopped sending announcements entirely. Linda and I built our own family instead. Her parents, friends like Shane who taught our daughter to ride a bike, Donovan and his wife Crystal, who became the honorary aunt and uncle for every scraped knee and terrible homemade birthday cake. It wasn't the family I expected. It was better, because every person in it had actually chosen to be there. For years I carried a quiet grief watching Linda's parents dote on our kids with a warmth that should have come from both sides. It didn't disappear until I finally understood that hoping for something my mother was never going to give me was its own self-inflicted wound. Then the call came. An unsaved number. Something made me answer. Gregory. I hadn't heard that voice in 9 years, and it still tightened something in my chest. I saw you on the television, she said, like she was commenting on the weather. 11 million, Gregory. That's what they're saying. A long pause. We should talk, as a family. Funny, I said. I don't remember you using that word in 9 years. I'd like to come by, she said, entirely ignoring me. This weekend. Every instinct told me to say no, but some small, curious part of me wanted to see exactly how far she'd go. Fine, I said. Come by. That single word was about to set off the most satisfying chain of events of my life. I told Linda that night at our kitchen table, the same table where we used to count crumpled dollar bills. After 9 years, after 11 million, I corrected. What do you want to do? That was the real question. Part of me wanted to slam the door the second she showed up, but another part, the part that had watched her absence shape every holiday, watched my wife carry the quiet weight of being blamed for a fracture she never caused, wanted something permanent. I want the world to see exactly who she is, I told Linda. Not hear about it secondhand, see it. Linda made me promise it wasn't about proving something to her, but about finally telling the truth where it couldn't be twisted smaller. I promised, and I meant it. I called Shane, my childhood friend turned video producer, and asked him to wire the living room. Tight angles, clean audio, total discretion. He asked if I was sure. I told him she'd resigned from the position of mother 9 years ago. Now she was just a stranger, arriving with a list of demands. He remembered my wedding, remembered looking at that empty side of the room. He came by 2 days early and installed 4 camera angles and 2 hidden audio pickups, everything feeding to a secure offline drive in my office. Think hard about whether you actually want to release this, he warned. Once it's out, there's no taking it back. I told him I'd had 9 years to think it through. I looped in Archer too, not for the brand, for something personal. I told her everything, the disownment, the silence, the sudden call. She was quiet a moment, then said it wasn't advice she usually gave, but she respected Linda too much not to help. Here's exactly how we're going to handle it. Donovan, when I called him, said I didn't need his permission, but if I was asking whether it was the right move, absolutely. Some debts don't get erased just because a decade passed. The day arrived. I sent our kids to Linda's sister Crystal's place, wanting them nowhere near the blast radius. Linda refused to hide in the bedroom. This affects me too, she said, straightening a picture frame that was already straight. I've survived 9 years of her silence. I can survive 20 minutes of her voice. At exactly 2 o'clock, my mother's car pulled into the driveway. She sat behind the wheel a full minute before getting out, like she was running through her lines. She looked older, gray now, stiff in her stride. For a second, some small residual part of me, the boy who used to run to her with a scraped knee, felt a pang of sympathy. Then she knocked, and the first words out of her mouth were, "You've done very well for yourselves. No hello, no apology, just an appraisal, like a real estate agent inspecting a property." We sat down, her in the armchair, Linda and me on the couch, cameras hidden in the bookshelf, behind a houseplant, built into a frame. She folded her hands. 11 million, I said. That's wonderful, Gregory, she said, with a pride that was almost impressive, given why she was actually there. Funny, I said. You didn't think I had much in me 9 years ago. That was a different situation, she snapped. The situation didn't change, Mom. Only the bank account did. She pulled out the folded paper. My stomach dropped even though I knew exactly what it was. First, a portion of the money set aside to secure her and my father's retirement. Because family takes care of family. I said nothing, just let the microphones catch it. Second, a formal family portrait, all of us together, to put the past behind us publicly. It would mean so much to Aunt Yvonne. Third, capital to get my cousin into the restaurant business, given my new leverage. And what's number 4? I interrupted. She looked up, unfazed. Fourth, an apology, from me, for how disrespectfully I'd spoken to her 9 years ago. Let me make sure I have this straight, I said. You disowned me for marrying my wife, cut off all contact for 9 years, no calls, no cards, and now you walk into my home demanding a retirement fund, a PR photo op, a handout for my cousin, and an apology, from me. There's no need to be difficult, she said. It's not difficult at all, I said. It's crystal clear. You didn't drive over here because you missed your son. You drove over because you saw an 8-figure number on the news and realized your silence was a bad investment. That's entirely unfair, she said. What's unfair, I said, is my children growing up without a grandmother because of your pride. What's unfair is my wife sitting here showing you basic decency after you refused to even say her name for a decade. This list is pathetic. Her face flushed. I am still your mother, she said. You were, I told her. But you forfeited that title the day your love came with a racial qualification. Linda hadn't said a word through any of it. Then, quietly, I'd like to say something. My mother's eyes flicked over, reluctant. 9 years ago, Linda said, you sat across from me for maybe 10 minutes before deciding everything you needed to know about my worth. You didn't ask about my career, my character, how I loved your son. You looked at my skin and vanished. I don't expect you to understand a mother's protective instincts, my mother snapped. I understand them perfectly, Linda said. I just don't respect yours. I never once asked Gregory to choose between us. He chose because your prejudice made anything else impossible. My mother's composure cracked, just a fraction. You have no idea what it's like to watch your child walk a path you're terrified of. You're right, Linda said. I don't, because I'm raising my children in a home full of unconditional love, completely free of the fear you just described. Maybe the path was never the problem. Maybe it was always you. I stood up before my mother could respond. We're done here. It's time for you to leave. You came into my home with an invoice disguised as a family reunion, I told her. You haven't asked one question about your grandchildren. You thought $11 million wiped away 9 years of hatred. It doesn't. Money didn't corrupt me, I said, when she accused me of exactly that. It bought me the one thing you never gave me, the freedom to exist without your approval. I'm the same man I was at 26 in your living room. You're the one who decided that life wasn't worth knowing. I'm just finally showing you the receipt. She went pale, then furious, then, for one split second, her eyes welled up. The first genuine crack in the mask all day. It passed instantly. She stormed out, list still clutched in her hand. That evening, Shane and I reviewed the footage. Every angle immaculate, audio crystal clear, no editing needed. This is annihilation, Shane said. Good, I told him. She made it real the day she valued her prejudice over her son. I'm just making sure the world sees the consequences. The next morning, I sent the cut to Archer. We didn't dump it onto some random channel. We coordinated with the same outlet that had run our acquisition feature, pitching it as the hidden follow-up to the Farmer's Market to Millions story. Audiences love a success story, Archer said. They live for a reversal. We published on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. No music, no effects, just my mother reading financial terms off a folded page, capped by the line that would trend nationwide. I'm just finally showing you the receipt. It went nuclear. The view count outpaced our original feature within 6 hours. Strangers dissected her every phrase. News networks picked up the fallout within a day. My inbox filled with messages. A woman thanking me for giving voice to a pain she'd never articulated. A young man saying the video gave him the courage to finally cut off an abusive parent. Donovan called laughing that our web traffic had tripled overnight. A national talk show invited Linda and me on. When the host asked if I regretted exposing her, I didn't hesitate. My mother enjoyed 9 years of privacy, I said. She used it to erase herself from her grandchildren's lives without a word. The moment she walked in with financial demands, instead of an apology, she forfeited her narrative control. I didn't expose her, I just stopped hiding her choices. That clip became the defining moment of the whole cycle. Linda's parents called after the broadcast, her mother in tears again, telling her how proud she was, her father simply saying, "You protected your wife and stood your ground, son. That's the measure of a man." Then the message I'd been waiting for arrived, a text from my sister Tiffany. "I just watched the broadcast. We need to talk." I called her that night. Is it really true? She asked, voice trembling. Did she really read those demands word for word? I told her I could send the raw footage if she wanted to see for herself. I always hoped she'd wake up and apologize on her own, Tiffany said. I guess I was naive. I'm so sorry, Gregory. I should have stood up for you 9 years ago. You were 20. Under her roof, I told her. You did what you had to do to survive. She's the one who built the wall. Tiffany asked to finally meet Linda properly, to be an aunt to my kids. They're going to love you, I told her, and meant every word. My Aunt Yvonne took the opposite path, calling to rage that my mother could no longer step outside without being recognized. That sounds like a direct consequence of her actions, I said, not a tragedy. Family doesn't disown a son over his wife's skin color, I told her. Family doesn't vanish for a decade and then show up with an invoice. I didn't ruin anything, Yvonne. I just handed her the bill. She hung up on me. A former neighbor later posted online about how exclusive my mother had always been, about which kids were welcome at her table. Proof the 4 demands weren't some sudden departure from her character. They were simply her, finally unfiltered. My cousin called, mortified, swearing he'd had no idea he was being used as a bargaining chip. I believed him. How's the restaurant idea coming? I asked. Slowly, he said, but on his own terms. He'd rather grind for 5 more years than take $1 with her strings attached. I respected that more than I could say. My father never said a single word, before or after. His silence answered a question I'd carried for years, whether he secretly disagreed but lacked the spine to say so. A man's character isn't defined by the thoughts he keeps to himself. It's defined by what he's willing to stand for out loud. He'd chosen, every time, to stand for nothing. The last call came from my mother herself, 3 weeks later. Take that video down, she said. It's ruined your father's standing. No self-reflection, just another complaint about consequences. No, I told her. You had 9 years to be a mother and chose pride every time. Now the world sees the receipt. I'm still your children's grandmother, she cried, composure finally breaking. You're a stranger to my children, I said. And you finalized that the day their mother's skin color made them unworthy of a phone call. Grandmother isn't a title you demand when your bank account runs low. It's earned with humility you've never shown. We're done, Mom. She never called again. The footage kept circulating for months, becoming a case study people cited on conditional love and boundaries. Sullivan and Grady's visibility only grew. Archer joked my mother had accidentally run the most lucrative marketing campaign in food history. Tiffany became a permanent fixture at our barbecues and birthdays. When she tried to apologize to Linda, Linda just hugged her and told her she wasn't responsible for her mother's sins. Donovan and Archer stayed close, still texting me the occasional article about the fallout with the same note. Still can't believe you pulled the trigger on that. I smile every time. My mother still lives in that San Jose house, according to Tiffany, blinds drawn, rarely leaving, fully aware of what the neighborhood now knows. And I feel no guilt about it. People expect these stories to end in tearful redemption, a clean slate. That's not real life. She had a decade of chances, a wedding invitation, 2 grandchildren, every avenue a person could ask for to offer grace. And every time she chose her own ego, that list wasn't a mistake. It was a summary of who she'd always been, finally caught in high definition. A few evenings ago, Linda and I sat on our back porch watching our kids chase each other through the grass. She asked if, knowing everything now, I'd still hit record. Every time, I told her, kissing the top of her head. The only thing I regret is that it took $11 million for the world to believe the truth about a prejudice that never should have mattered in the first place. Sometimes I still think about that living room 9 years ago, the slow, deliberate placement of the coffee cup, the quiet verdict passed before I could finish a sentence. I used to carry real grief over what that night cost me. Now I see it clearly. It didn't cost me a family. It exposed one that never truly existed and cleared the path for me to build a real one, a wife who never asked me to shrink myself. A sister who found her courage 9 years late and never stopped trying to make up for it since. A business partner who bet on us when no one else would. A friend who wired a house with cameras because he trusted my judgment even when it scared him. A consultant who believed the truth deserved an audience. And 2 children who will never know what it feels like to be measured and found wanting by the people who were supposed to love them without conditions. That's the real inheritance. Not the money, not the video. My mother wanted a photo to put the past behind us, because a photo doesn't ask questions. It just proves nothing ever happened. But it was never going to be that easy. Not after 9 years of exactly that kind of easy silence. Some doors, once you close them, are meant to stay that way. I closed mine, and I've never once looked back.